everyone, just another video from Mad World Studios, and today we're just going to quickly go through the production process of the game which I made in Flash CS4 via using ActionScript, the game called Hungry Rabbits. If you haven't watched the gameplay video already, I'll just take you through the rules of the game really quickly. Basically, it's just a typical catcher game, to be perfectly honest. Really basic game. The first one that I've created in Flash, so I wanted to go down the relatively simple route just to understand the fundamentals. So basically you control a catcher, but in this case it's a graphic of a little rabbit. As you can see in the little background here, it's a really happy game. Not usually what I typically make, but in the name of being versatile, I thought I'd go for it. So you control a little rabbit graphic, and the red apples fall from the apples fall from the sky. You've got two types. You've got the red apples, which you want to eat, and you've got the rotten green apples, which you have to avoid. Now, the rules of the game are you have to catch as many red apples as you can to accumulate a high score possible in the time constraint of a minute. And if you drop 5 of the red apples, then it's game over. And if you catch or eat if you catch or eat any of the green apples, then it's game over as well. So the production process I went through to make the game, I went through the typical avenues such as creating some designs, going through making a Gantt chart just so I could get my timings correct, because this was actually an assignment for college, funnily enough, going back quite a while now. So obviously it would constrain by time. So if you just bring up the Gantt chart and just take a look at that really quickly. As you can see, I've got a very extensive Gantt chart, and it goes through the entire production process, such as research, brainstorming, and getting the resources, the project plan, schedule and proposal, content production, and I've made sure I've given myself enough time. Was factoring in contingencies, as you can see here. And obviously I've got the deadline in red. I had to do quite a fair bit of reading because this was my first shot at any kind of programming / scripting. I use the word programming very loosely because I know programmers go absolutely mad at me. This was my first shot at scripting, to be perfectly honest, so I had to do quite a bit of research to make sure I understood the fundamentals. And as you can see here, I've got everything laid out, factored in times for holidays, etc, etc, and everything's nicely color coordinated. So after I actually came up with the plan, I started to, well, not directly after, but one of the processes I had to go through was just drawing up some character designs or some stage designs. It's a typical process of doing level designs, to be perfectly honest. And if we scroll through here, as you can see, I've got the first drawing of the character or the catcher that the player controls, the two types of berry, the way the maps or the stage is laid out. And if you just fly through the rest of this really quickly, you can see that it did develop over time. I wanted to make sure I got the size of the stage correct, so it didn't feel too wide. So there were so many apples coming down in a wide area that it was impossible for the player to get from. Let's say you're on the left hand side of the screen, they didn't want to make it too hard for them to get to the right hand side of the screen for this matching the speed of the apple coming down. So even though it was a very simple game, there was a lot of considerations just for gameplay and usability purposes. So if we carry on scrolling through, you can see the character developed more. I started to constrain the stage some more. And it is worth mentioning, this wasn't my first idea. I didn't think of making a catcher game. It was probably like my contingency, just in case I couldn't make the original game I wanted to make. And the original game I did want to make was where you still control the same graphic, but instead of using the mouse to scroll left or right horizontally to catch falling apples, there would be a red apple on the screen, and you would use the arrow keys to actually navigate the rabbit graphic to actually eat this apple. But the catch was that there was gravity acting upon the rabbit graphic. So while you were trying to eat the red apple and use the arrow keys, gravity was trying to pull you down, and there was a green apple bouncing around the stage that you had to avoid whilst trying to battle with gravity and eat the red apple. But that became a bit too complicated. I couldn't get certain mechanics working, so I did actually develop my idea to the catcher game that we have here called Hungry Rabbits. Something I did forget to mention was that as well, in the whole design process, after making the Gantt chart, etc., I put the pen to paper and I started to brainstorm a few ideas. And obviously, as you can see here in my list of Flash game ideas, I've got memory games, an original game which I could just make on the fly, a scrolling shooter, collecting game, trash collecting game, and a catching game. So right from the get-go, the catching game was in my list of considerations, and I whittled those down, and I wanted to carry forward a few ideas. I really was hung up on this idea of making a car game. The catching game was still there because it was probably the safest option, and an original game, one that I could just mix and match different mechanics from all of the games you see here in the brainstorm and create something original. After doing that, my second part of my brainstorm was making a risk chart, and I've got my very risky idea, which is the car game. My safest idea was the catching game because I already sourced a tutorial that could talk me through how to make that, and the very risky idea was the original game where I mixed all different elements of these games to create one. Obviously, the safest option was the catching game, and as I do keep saying, was my first time scripting anything, so the safest thing for me to do was to pick something that was relatively basic, could teach me the fundamentals, and as well as that, there was something there to guide me through just in case I slipped up in any areas. Okay, so if you look at the scripts really quickly, the framework behind the game, the graphics, the stuff that's making all the events and actions happen, we're just gonna go through this really quickly. As I keep reiterating, it's really basic stuff. It is a really simple game, but as I did say before, this was the first time I did actually script anything, so it was all about getting the fundamentals correct and understanding exactly what I was doing. But before I go any further, just thought I'd get this out there. I did use a tutorial to construct this game. Obviously, I've used different graphics, I've adapted certain elements of the game, so in that I did have to understand exactly what was taking place, but I didn't want to be accused of plagiarism, so I just thought I'd mention that. But in ActionScript, or should I say within Flash and ActionScript, everything's controlled via keyframes and scenes, and within each frame is a script and etc. So I've got 4 frames, as you can see at the top here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and obviously the first part's the start, the introduction, the bit that says, well, if you watch the gameplay video, the little graphic that you can click on, or the button you can click on to start the game, this is what's controlling that. Just a simple mouse event where you click down and it causes something to happen, and obviously the event listener that's looking for the mouse down event controls the start screen and then takes you to the next screen, which is the game screen. And on the game screen, this is basically the game. Everything that you see happening in the game, moving the mouse from left to right, catching the apples and scoring points, catching the wrong apple and game over, etc. That's all being controlled via this script here. And as I keep saying, it's just basic stuff really, just calling variables with strings, numbers, integers, etc, and just calling upon these variables, upon the declared variables within the function to allow things to happen. So all the mechanics of the game are controlled via this script here. The game over is just a simple text screen that says the game over U8, and obviously calling upon that score variable to add it in here as a number, and tells you how much, and obviously it says I'm sure you can do better, to basically prompt the player to play again. And this is the congratulations screen, just another simple text screen with a GUI that's basically telling you exactly how much you weigh and if you want to try again and play the game again. And that's basically it, guys. Just a really simple game, although it was fairly complex to me at the time. But that's basically it, really. And this was another video from Madwell Studios. Thanks for watching.